Ranting, reflecting, reasoning, reckoning.
The Huddle, with corporate cars delivering unbeatable prices on luxury European vehicles.
NewstalkZB 23 to 6, The Huddle this evening. Josie Pagani, I guess we'll call her political campaigner, and Cameron Slater from Whale Oil. Good evening to you both.
Hello.
Good
Cam.
evening, Susan.
Oh, you are there, good. Interesting, isn't it? And I'll start with you on this one, Cameron. Lawyer Deborah Manning, she's, if you go back to 2002, very well known. She worked for the man Ahmed Zawi. He spent some time in prison here. He was finally released. It was whether he was a refugee or not. And what's interesting is she takes up the job as Deputy Chief of Staff under Matt McCartan in David Cunliffe's office. Of course, David Cunliffe was the minister in the time who wouldn't let Mr Zawi's family into New Zealand.
Well, it is very interesting, but it's, I think, more interesting is that this signals the continued lurch to the hard left under David Cunliffe. Deborah Manning is clearly from that area. The people who supported Ahmed Zawi the hardest were the people that, you know, Matt McCartan is more well known to hang around with, and the Keith Locks of this world, that hard left, almost green tinge as well. And I think this is just yet another signal that Labour is still heading hard left rather than towards the centre ground.
Josie?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I remember living in Paris a few years back when she was working on that case, and she came to dinner at our place with a bunch of her lawyer team. And I was impressed with how hard-working she is and committed. I mean, she's almost sort of, religious about her causes and does the hard yards. I mean, look, I would say, Cam, no, I agree with what you're saying, but what I would say is that David Cunliffe is appointing people like Deborah Manning. He's doing exactly what he said he'd do and exactly what the Labour Party wanted him to do when they voted him leader. And the theory, Susan, is that they'll win the election by motivating the missing million, and you do that with a greater focus on protest activity and campaigning and sort of an anti-establishment strand. So the real test will be, if this works, then there'll be the next government. If it doesn't, then there will be, a re-examination of that theory that's how you motivate the people who didn't vote last time.
What do we know about her credentials? I mean, I agree with you, Josie, having interviewed her a few times. She's certainly very religious about her causes. You wouldn't doubt her hard work. But what do we know about her skill set as a Deputy Chief of Staff in an opposition leader's office, Cam?
Well, I don't think she necessarily has those skills, although a hard-working legal aid lawyer scoring hundreds of thousands of dollars, anybody can work hard when they're getting that amount.
Oh, come on, that's not fair. That's not fair.
It is me, but I didn't disappoint you. And the bottom line is there's a big difference between managing a barrister's practice and trying to corral a bunch of miserable, demotivated people who are copping a flogging in the polls day in, day out.
Actually, it's interesting that I think, a big deal was made of the fact that Matt McCartan won't be doing policy. We've been told that ad infinitum. So presumably her role as Deputy Chief of Staff will be to focus on the development of policy. That's one of the roles in the past that Deputy Chief of Staffs have done. So, that'll be interesting to see where that takes the Labour Party in terms of its policy priorities.
And what do you think about the skill set, Josie?
Deborah copes with the pay cut as well.
Oh, I don't know. I actually think it would be very unfair to say that she was someone motivated by money. I wouldn't have read that as her at all, Josie, would you?
In fact, probably she might need to be motivated by money a little bit more, because some would argue that if the Labour Party was focusing on its more traditional messages of higher wages and being on the side of wage earners and how you create jobs, they might be in a better position to do better in the election.
But why would you quit being a successful barrister, very high profile, obviously collecting the fees that go with that, and go into what's likely to be a very temporary, very short-term job in a parliamentary office? Well,
I would say that she is a campaigner. She is somebody who's clearly motivated by single issues and by, in some ways, the people in David Cunliffe's office now probably have, more of a record of fighting the GCSB and spying than they do with the kids who are going to GCs looking for jobs.
Yeah, but do we really need more single-issue nutters in a supposed supposedly a broad-spectrum political party.
Well,
and
again,
this is the problem that David Cunliffe's heading. He's got all of these people that are very niche, very micro-niche even in some cases, and they're completely missing the actual working Kiwi.
Sounds like one of those sort of green salads with the micro-greens in it. We'll take a quick break there. Cameron Slater and Josie Pagani back with them in just a moment. It's 18 to 6.
Larry's away. It's Susan Wood on Larry Williams Drive with ANZ, the bank with more local experts on NewstalkZB.
NewstalkZB at 16 to 6. We're with Josie Pagani and Cameron Slater. More women in the police force, Josie. Currently 1 in 5, about 20% is female, and there's just a handful who've got anywhere. And I see the new commissioner today, we spoke to him earlier in the program, coming out trying to encourage more women in. Do you think it'll work?
Well, I think the police force need it, and you'd never have anything like the roastbusters that we had last year, with this sort of deaf ear that the police had at the beginning of that, where they couldn't see why this was such a big issue. And I think if you had more women in the police force, Mike Bush would never have sounded so insensitive at the beginning of all of that. Look, they've done this before. They've recruited, they made a sort of positive move to recruit more Pacific Islanders, more Māori cops, and that was an excellent thing to do, because our police force should look like us, shouldn't it? Just like Parliament should look like us. And so, I think there are a lot of things they can do beyond simply a fixed quota, and this has always been my argument with quotas anyway, that you've got to analyse what's stopping women get into the police force, and I'm sure that it's, the sexism, the sort of culture of alpha men running around.
What about personal safety? Do you really want to be out there? We're never going to be as strong as men, Josie. And I asked the commissioner this, and he said, we've got ways, and actually you can talk people down, and a good attitude gets you out of things. But I'd be scared, to be honest.
It's really interesting, actually, because I worked in the film industry about 20 years ago in the camera unit, which was all men, traditionally all men, and they're all blokes, building stuff to put the camera on, and the grips and the gaffers and so on. And the perception was that, women aren't strong enough to carry the camera gear. But actually, and we didn't have our HT. So I went out and got my HT, and I had systems to carry heavy stuff. I created a trolley with wheels on it, and I had something I dragged stuff on. There are always ways around the strength thing, and I was a better focus puller than most of the men I worked with. So,
yeah, but that's the thing, Josie, is you wanted to do that. Is there actually a problem here? Is there a long list of women who have wanted to be police officers and haven't been able to get in because they're women?
I bet you there is, actually.
I bet you there isn't. I mean, it's a nasty, horrible job, and I feel sorry for any cop who's on the street in the middle of the night in the dark alleys of South Auckland or in Central Auckland, where some really rather disgusting and heinous crimes happen and violence towards the police officers.
But Cam, if you followed that argument, you'd never have any women soldiers, you'd never have any women doing anything.
Women soldiers have got something that's a whole lot better than
they got a gun.
Police officers have, is they have a rifle, and they have hand grenades, and they have the ability to kill people.
Yes.
The police generally, unless they're senior, don't have access to firearms. But a handgun or a taser is a great equaliser in a battle, and so strength doesn't really come to matter in that. But I would think that if you are going to have more women in the police, maybe we do look at arming the police more robustly. I'm all for that.
That's a good
I've never
issue.
been against that.
And that's another issue, and I think that you're right, that needs debating too. But if you go back to the 40s, I think it was, before women were even allowed to apply to go into the police, and they had to be single or widows in order to apply, and they had these uniforms, apparently, that were distinguished from the men because they had hats, gloves and handbags.
The thing is, though, is
that would be your attitude then, Cam, that, all that
service in the police tends to make widows of anybody anyway, because of the job, the nature of
the
it.
hours,
I'm saying they're actually dying. I'm saying that it's such an intense job that I would think that the toll on marriages from police officers would be horrendous.
Cam, you can't say that. That's like saying women shouldn't go into politics because it's such an anti-family friendly environment.
Let's agree it's a tough job and talk about...
If a woman wants to go into the police, there really are no barriers stopping them going.
We have a minute left, folks, and I want to get on to the Royals. Are you besotted? No, you'd be a Republican, Josie, wouldn't you?
Talking of traditional roles.
But the publicity they're getting us. You look at the Daily Mail, millions of people a day look at that. You look at the headlines all around the world we are getting for New Zealand because they're here. It's pretty good, isn't it?
My 13-year-old daughter announced to me yesterday that she's decided she's a Moroccan. And I said, what? It turns out she meant Monicus.
She's a dear girl, your daughter. Cameron, are you catching this royal fever?
No, not
No,
really, but
I knew you wouldn't.
It is interesting. But
It's only you, Susan.
I got it.
I look at this, though, and I think it must suck to be a royal, really. I mean, if you're a normal pleb like Josie and me and
me,
Susan, we go somewhere around the world and we arrive and we get off on the plane and we're in air-conditioned luxury from the moment we step off the plane, up these nice OSH-required slopes, through nice queues and air-conditioned luxury. These poor buggers, they have to go down wobbly stairs in the howling gales or the hot sun. They just have a rubbish life.
Holding the baby in the high heels. Cameron Slater, Josie Pagani, very good to talk to you both. It is 10 to 6.